Hi, Ishita.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much for joining me today to talk about your experience applying to top European B schools and, of course, ISB as well in India. And how did we, eventually get to the admit that you really got? So, we would, of course, like to hear that journey before getting into INSEAD as well. So,
Right.
let's get started by, sharing a little bit about your background. So, Ishita, if you can introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your personal and professional journey, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. So, my name is Ishita. I am a pastry chef and a pastry consultant, which I know sounds very different from your average MBA applications, which was always an interesting point throughout my MBA journey. I started my career as a sous chef with the Oberoi Group, and now I run my own business here in Bangalore. And about a year ago is when I decided that maybe I want to pivot from, just food and beverage to a larger uh, industry. So, retail, luxury, and, pivot into the strategy consultant sort of a role. And that's when I decided I want to do an MBA. And yeah, that's how my journey for doing an MBA started.
Cool. And when you decided that you wanted to think, consider applying for an MBA, how aware were you about the process? Given what you know now, of course, at that point, what would you say was your awareness level? What would you say were the reasons why you even considered working with a consultant? And then specifically, maybe if you can share why you decided to work with Lilac Buds.
Absolutely. So I think my awareness levels were, it's been a full journey from a zero to 100. I had no idea where to even start. I looked up, I realized that, there's something called a GMAT. You have to give a GMAT. I gave a mock GMAT. I got a score and I was like, okay. And then I found out it's not a bad score. And I was like, okay, maybe I can take this forward. So I first gave my GMAT because, being from hospitality, it's not traditionally a very, you know, a like a very math heavy or a very science heavy sort of a field. So I was like, can I still give an exam and do well in it? Was question one for me. So I first gave the GMAT before I had my school shortlisted, before I had anything. And post my first GMAT, I got a certain score, and then I was like, okay, this is good. Maybe it can be better, but I wasn't sure again. So that's when I reached out to different consultants, and I spoke to Vashi from your team. I spoke to a few other consultants, and I think the one thing that really stood out for me for Lilac Buds was just how encouraging during even that first call she was. It was a very detailed call. It wasn't just a send your details across. It was a okay, your experience, your education, your current score. Do you want to give a GMAT again? What geographies have you thought of? What schools have you thought of? Which I hadn't thought of any schools at that point. So every single detail she asked me, and then I connected with you as well. And then, when we decided to take it forward, there was the slight nudge, hey, do you maybe want to give your GMAT again?
Mhm.
Which I was like, okay, maybe I can do that. And then I gave the GMAT again, got a slightly better score. And that's when I was like, okay, this is it. This is the score that we have to work with. So
Correct.
let's start the process now.
And the final score was 635, right? If I recollect.
655.
655. Sorry. The original
Yeah.
score was how much?
45.
645. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So 645 to 655 was a 10-point improvement, but still that 10-point improvement helped, I'm guessing, in some shape or form to
Let's just
to,
say that
to,
that
to,
made all
to
the
knock the
difference.
scholarship, if you want to call it that, in the
Yeah.
end. But the little icing on the cake, we never know what really adds value sometimes to your overall application. But it's glad, right? Like very important for us to realize that every applicant brings a different strength to the school. You come from a very differentiated background. You're probably the first culinary background person that we worked with, right? Who was actually on the creative side of things. But of course, I worked with a restaurant manager earlier, somebody who owned and operated a restaurant, but no, not somebody who was actually cooking, right? Or
Yeah.
had actually got that kind of hotel management kind of experience that you had come with. So that was, of course, one unique element. And we spoke about that. I remember very clearly when we started off that when you have something fresh to talk about to the business school, you also add fresh ideas to the classroom. And when you add fresh ideas to the classroom, the GMAT is important, but it is slightly less important compared to somebody else who comes with a very traditional classical technology finance kind of background where the GMAT is also going to play an important role eventually in terms of quantitative readiness that they have to present to the school as well, right? So moving on, now that you decided to enroll with us, you started the process. What parts of the process were the most challenging for you? Like, from shortlisting programs to maybe thinking about your essays to thinking about your stories, which ones to share, to what was important in your story, maybe, and then eventually moving into recommendations because that was another aspect as well. So you can just talk about different challenges, which ones were more challenging than the others, and which ones were relatively easier for you given your background.
Absolutely. So when it came to shortlisting, I think that was one of the easier parts because I knew if I want to do an MBA, I want to do it from one of the top schools in the world and get one of the best exposure that the world essentially has to offer. And at the same time, we were very clear about the geographies because I did not want to work in the Americas. It was either Asia or Europe. And apart from that, we also spoke about how the certain UK schools are more finance heavy, so we wanted to basically target schools that are more diverse or have a more retail, luxury, hospitality, that sort of a leaning. So we had, I think, two very detailed conversations about that. And so the shortlisting was still the easier part of it. I think for me, what took a lot of effort was the not even the essays. Like right before the essays, you sent out the format and you made me write a bunch of different stories
Yeah, the
under
story
different
pool. The
headers.
story pool. That's right.
Yes,
Yes. Yeah.
right. So there was a
Under the
leadership and a
leadership, teamwork.
motivation.
That,
Exactly.
yeah, that one. Yes. Right.
And you see, my stories are very normalized to me. But when I would, and you would read them and you're like, okay, this does not sound like anything special. But when I would be telling them to you, like, hey, this is a really interesting aspect. Why have you not put that in more or focus on that? Or basically just make the stories more vibrant, more vivid.
Mhm.
And that sort of, made me understand better that how different my background is and how the stories that are so normalized for me might be a very different story, and my experiences are very different from the average corporate experience that a lot of other candidates might be coming in with.
Yeah.
So that whole process took a while where I would write and rewrite a story. And I think because that homework was so well done, later on when we got to the essay part, there was not a lot of, brand new ideas and brainstorming happening because I already had that pool of stories. So we could just, work them better and refine them and apply them to the essays.
Yeah, I know, and totally agreed on those things. And I think, that story pool is something that the whole idea of building a pool was so that you can draw upon them, not just
Yeah.
in the essays, but, in the interviews as well. That becomes your, when you keep regurgitating that same message in different ways about your transferable skills, about your values, about who you are as a person in terms of how you think and interact with people and collaborate people, that needs to come out through that story pool. And I remember you telling me generally, like, I'm responsible for buying and procurement decisions of the kitchen. And I was like, yaar, ye itna maza nahi aaya. That's what, right? But the fact that you worked with a lot of these different people who came from different parts of India, who couldn't even speak English, who are part of your team and trying to work on big projects and getting them to do day-to-day things in a five-star hotel required a lot more in terms of leadership orientation, in terms of collaboration to make sure that they are well supported. So, it's got to be that experience, you got to look at it from a different light. And I think that's what we try to do as consultants as well, in terms of, helping you reframe those experiences from what you think was not so important, or what you thought was more important was actually not that important, but what you thought was not so important was probably a slightly more important in context of what is the real transferable skill. Because when you're applying to programs like INSEAD, which has a very, very diverse cohort from so many parts of the world, that element I told you when we started off, right? Like, they look at internationality. Now, you didn't have any international experiences. This is one
Yeah.
of the things, again, that I mentioned when we started the INSEAD program, right? That they value internationality a whole lot. How do we bring that out? And I remember brainstorming a lot more about, that element, of course, through the Ambani wedding that you supported was one element, but other than that, how else do you bring this out more clearly where you worked with international counterparts, or, brought out a lot more of the diversity elements very clearly in your profile. So moving on, GMAT done. story pool done, essays are going on. Of course, recommendations is that's the other piece. If you can talk briefly about how you went about the recommendations, because that brings out your BNI and clients, and talk a little bit about that element.
Absolutely. So, in my recommendations, we again were sort of thinking about who to, because I don't really have a supervisor right now that I can refer to. So, we decided one of the recommenders to be my previous boss from the Oberoi Group when I was working with them, and the other recommender to be a person, a client who I not only do like direct sales with, but I also work with him as a vendor. So those were the two people. Then you really helped me with the sort of questions that, basically encompassed what essentially all the recommendations would ask for.
Mm.
So I could, because both of them are very busy people, so I couldn't expect them to, on the spot think of, a 500-word essay.
Yeah.
So when I asked both of them, they were like, okay, what do we have to do? And I'm like, I really don't know. It's going to be very different from it for every school. And but yeah, because we also started the applications well in advance, which is something I would not have realized had I just done it on my own.
True.
If the deadline was a 10th, I would have maybe started on a 5th or a 6th, and then I would maybe not be able to do it, but my recommenders for sure would not be able to do it, because they're in some remote part of the country, they're available, they have events. It's a whole mix and match of things, right? So that was definitely helpful, because they were also sort of mentally prepared on what kind of questions, so they could help jog their memory. I also made them a little fact sheet, because some applications asked for, okay, when did this person start working with you, when did they end working with you, so
Yeah.
on and so forth. So
Yeah.
all the, like, a ready reckoner for them. So I
Mm.
think that process was also made very smooth for them.
Correct. No, and I
Yeah,
think because it was made smooth through the interactions you had done with them and got them to think about how you want to talk about your experiences, they were able to present that appropriately, I believe, for the application as well.
absolutely.
Uh, Going forward, right? Like then we applied to 4 schools. You
Yeah.
can share the schools, you can share your admits at this stage so that everybody just knows, what you got in, and of course the scholarship as well.
Sure. So we applied to, in the order, HEC Paris, INSEAD, ISB, and SDA Bocconi, of which I was passed on by HEC Paris and SDA Bocconi. I got an admit to INSEAD with a 35,000 euro scholarship, and I got an admit to ISB with my preferred campus, but with no scholarship.
Okay, thank you for
Yeah.
that, and congratulations, of course, once again for the amazing admits. INSEAD
Thank you.
ranked high on your list, definitely on your number one and two with HEC, I guess, right on that list, and
Definitely.
priority number one. Uh, of course, with the GMAT and other things, we had that little bit of a doubt there. But when the interview started coming, right, like you got the HEC reject first, or you got the INSEAD interview first? Which happened first?
I got the HEC reject first, and
Okay.
within 24 hours, I got the INSEAD
The
interview.
The
Yeah.
INSEAD interview
Yeah.
call. Yes, right. So
Yeah.
one jhatka, and then
Yeah.
one moment of excitement out there as well to land up
And I
getting the
remember
interview.
you telling me that this is like the first of the roller coaster that you're gonna be expecting for the rest of your
That's
journey
right.
here.
Right. Imagine
Yeah.
that is really a roller coaster, right? Like imagine the first day you get that regret letter, you're already feeling depressed. You're wondering like, will I get anything at all? And I mean, not just you, for every applicant who, if your first decision is not an admit, I know a lot of students who will feel, a lot of applicants will feel like disappointed. They'll start doubting everything that they've done. And when the interview calls, if the interview call has come first with at least one or two, they don't feel bad about the decision of not having got in, right? But if the
Yeah, it sort of
interview call
pads
is
the
also not
rejection.
coming in, yeah, that then the rejection bites a whole lot more.
Yeah.
And honestly, that I think is the and somebody who is able to look beyond the rejection and keep the focus on the other elements of the interview prep, which is again right. The immediately once we got that interview prep invite, I mean, sorry, the interview invite,
Interview.
we start focusing on the prep for make sure that that we convert that admit as well, because the top school you really need to get your focus back in terms of what you'll present. So let's talk about the interview briefly. What about the interview prep was like the highlight for you, like the preparation, the mocks, the questions? uh, what do you think was that experience like for you?
Absolutely. So because I've had a client-facing job, and I've, interacted with so many people across a wide variety of, everything. very diverse group of people. I was like, okay, interview that I have in my pocket, I would have no problems in an interview. So in fact, when you said, okay, let's do an interview prep, I was like, do I really need an interview prep? But then, once we got on the call and we started going through the question list, I was like, oh, because, I can talk about myself, but then to have a story that really creates an impact versus what we talked about, a story which I might think is important but does not, is not that impactful. Very different things, right? But we really went through so many questions from different resources. And then I would really like to shout out your portal because you have a whole list of video interview questions, which is a part of the INSEAD interview format. So I was able to practice them and submit a few, and then I would get feedback on them. So that was really helpful. And also to because in the INSEAD format as well, it had I think a 1 minute think for
Kira talent video essays, yes.
Yes, yes. So, you have to like think for 45 seconds and answer within a minute, which is easier said than done because you don't want to be in the middle of a sentence when that, timer hits zero.
Yeah.
So, very small, but I'm so glad I had that resource to practice it. So by the time I got to the actual interview, it was much easier done. I was able to gather my thoughts in 45 seconds and all of that. And again, going back to the story pool that we had initially created, before every interview, everything, I would just go through it. I mean, it's my story pool, but it was just a good refresher to be like, okay, yeah, this is something that we worked on, and this is a good story, and we can, just store it back in the mind so that you can
Yeah.
pull it up when you need to.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think the whole idea is practice makes perfect. You were right that maybe you've done some client-facing work. A lot of people who we work with may not have that much client-facing work. The idea is that even if you're ready, it's a school like INSEAD, and you know how grilling ISB was as well, right? So
yeah,
when it came to that, right, I think we had to redo all the interview prep one more time
yeah,
because the formats are so different. And ISB INSEAD
absolutely.
was all in person, where in your city you were like, you had to be different uh, in terms of demeanor versus what the ISB interview panel looks like, more informal versus formal settings.
Yeah.
How do you kind of give them everything that you would like to share with them about what you will bring to their classroom, what you will bring to them. And and again, it's the mindset game, right? Something that I must have told you and I tell almost every applicant is, remember, you are in charge in that interview because eventually at the end of the day they want you as well, and they want your money as well. They want two things from you, right? And keeping that in mind already frames it differently from that perspective, right? That unlike a job interview where most people are like, like, I'm going to get paid for my services,
Right.
here you are going to offer your knowledge, of course, gain knowledge from them at the same time, but at the same time, also be on, the commercial transaction goes the other way here. So again, so interview prep happened, then the waiting game started. Talk a little bit about the waiting game
Can I
for
just
getting.
also
Yeah,
just interject here? And I
yeah,
would like really commend your patience because even during the interview prep, I asked you, I think the most hopefully not the most bizarre question because I would ask you, okay, what can I wear? What can I not wear? Can I take them some cookies?
yeah. The
Would
cookie
that be seen
question. The
as
cookie
bribe
question
or
was a
not
trick one. We
bribe?
had to
Yeah.
think a little bit about it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because whenever I go to meet a potential client or something, I take them a little something. It's
yeah.
just, yeah, so we were like, okay, is that proper? Is that not proper? Then I had a little hiccup with my ISB application, a documentation issue. So I remember called you really late at night and I was like, hey, what if they think I'm not educated? So we had a lot of small hiccups along the way, and I was like, I really hope you pick up my call after the last one.
Uh,
But yeah, you did all this while, so really thank you for that.
No, thank you for those kind words. But yeah, no, I remember that call that, hey, you know what, these guys are, the ISB guys have checked something on my
Rejected my college.
transcript, and the transcript is not matching with what I've written
Yeah,
there. While it is the same thing, it's mentioning it this way. Should I change it? I was like, yeah, change it. I mean, I remember that, the university name has to match exactly as per their
yeah,
standards, and then we were worried that, does this mean, like, will it like kind of reduce the strength of
yeah.
the quality of the
Application.
application overall, if you have to mention it that way and things like that. But all got resolved, thankfully. So yeah, I mean, once the interviews were done, the admit came after both the interviews were done, right? So, and INSEAD
Yes.
came first. What was that feeling like?
Honestly unbelievable, because right from the start NCR sort of seemed like little bit of a reach, because everywhere you see there are people with a 705 GMAT, if not higher, and whatnot. And I was like, okay. And even when our conversation, we're like, okay, we'll apply, but it seems like a bit of a reach. But I was really happy when the call came, and even with the scholarship notification, that was unbelievable.
Yeah,
Yeah, so great. And then when ISB converted, which again, because my ISB interview, the experience was a little different from people around me.
yeah.
So I wasn't sure whether or not I will convert it. But when that happened, I was like, it was a very pleasant surprise.
Good, awesome. So,
Yeah,
getting the two admits, of course, for you, INSEAD was already on the top of the pecking order. So,
yeah,
the still, and with the scholarship, it was already the icing on the cake. So, that was already quite clear. But today, if you ask me again, right, like I think the kind of exposure you want, the kind of ambition that you have for your career right now at this point in time, the international feel is going to be a real big value add in your growth. And INSEAD being a school where applicants who want to eventually move into the consumer goods sector, the retail sector, the food and beverages sector, the beauty sector, they are really, really strong on outcomes on that front as well, even compared to ISB overall, right? ISB is also good.
yeah,
They do work with Unilever and ITC and some other big international brands as well do come there, but nothing in comparison to what you'll end up seeing at INSEAD overall. So
absolutely.
so that wrapped up the journey. Now, of course, the visa thing is all going on, and that will happen in due course. What would be your one when you reflect back on the whole experience of working with Lilac Buds, of course, working with me, but also something that you would keep in mind if you were to redo this journey, or something that you would give as an advice to other people when they're starting their journey now for applying for an MBA at 27, 28 intakes, whatever they're looking at. What would be your key message for applicants like that?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I will say, and people can take away from this whatever they'd like, but one of my key takeaways with working with you, and why I really preferred working with Lilac Buds was uh, because I come from such a different background. I wasn't sure if I was, the cookie cutter MBA student, or, I didn't know the jargon. I did not know if the words I would use or the essays I would produce would be the kind of essays, would be the kind of language that, B schools look for. Uh, so, but working with you, it really, you not only helped me sharpen my stories, but also sharpen my language. And initially I was a little hesitant in working with a consultant, because I had heard that a lot of times it's the consultant's response to the essay, which was not the case here at all. Like, you made me write and rewrite once again all the different essays, but I was happy to do that, because at the end of the day it's my story, and no one can tell it better than me. And you were there to help me refine it,
Yeah,
which was definitely the icing on the cake. And I think that was the best part. So I would definitely say, if anybody is looking to start their journey, first of all, um, figure out a little more than I figured out to begin with. At least zero down on your post MBA goals, which was again a challenge, because I know what I wanted to do. I know what a day in my life would look like, but I did not have the vocabulary to put that in words. So that's where the career services really helped, and we really spoke about that for a while, and
yeah,
did a lot of research and understood that what exactly are the titles for the roles, the kind of roles that I would be doing. So figure out what those post MBA role would be. And it's okay to change it over time. It's okay to, with new exposure, be flexible with that. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's your story that wins.
yes. No,
And you don't have,
and we use
yeah.
ChatGPT smartly for many of those roles instead of using it for the essays, which most students try to do.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
used it more for helping you understand the fitment, the opportunities, the kind of exposure, the kind of roles and responsibilities that you'll end up taking up. Because those are things that really eventually need to come in depth. And, of course, if you've connected with alumni and spoken to them and understood their roles as well, that would be the other way to take
absolutely.
the input. But many of these things are available publicly on LinkedIn and job forums and whatnot. So making the most of them is really the way somebody would should use ChatGPT rather than using it for essays and other things. I think that's the smarter way to get AI to help you and assist you towards writing more cohesive, more intellectual application, if I was to call it that. But yeah, thank you once again, Ishita, for sharing your story with so much fervor, and candidness. And I once again wish you the best. Thank you for, putting your trust in Lilac Buds and me. And congratulations once again for your admit.
Thank you. Thank you so much for, I mean, would definitely not have been able to do it without Lilac Buds.
Thank you. And we'll of course be making sure that once you are on campus, we'll have somebody reach out to you and seek your inputs when you are an alum or when you are somebody who's already in the system to always get your intakes from a first hand perspective as well when they are going through this journey as well. All right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Bye.
Yeah.